So, your program is going to read in two files. One file has the name of a band, colon, a list of how many of each type of instrument they've got. Right? Obviously, I didn't write out all of the instruments and counts for the Berliner Philharmonic, but you get the idea. Right? The other file tells you how many instruments are required to play various pieces of music. Right? Beethoven's Zeroth Symphony, he didn't get very far. Right? 2 violins, 1 viola, 1 percussion, 1 trumpet. Okay, the Berliner Philharmonic could play it. It has enough of those instruments. But it couldn't play Bunkers in the Ukraine by 10,000 volts because I don't see any guitars or bass up there. They've got the percussion, but they don't have the guitar and the bass. Okay. Similarly, 10,000 volts, great band, could not play Beethoven's Zeroth Symphony. No violins. Right? You tend not to find violins in a thrash zydeco band. So, you're going to read in that file that tells you the name of the band and how many of each type of instrument they've got. And you're going to read in a file that tells you the name of the piece of music and how many instruments it requires. And you're just going to print out a list to tell me which pieces of music each band could play. All right? Now let me introduce you to a couple of small tools that we haven't seen so far. It'll just take a couple of minutes, and then we'll pair up and solve it. But everybody understands the problem. Okay. So let me fire up Python. Let me say text equals A, B, C, D, E. Text.split gives me back a list of that string broken apart on white space. As you can see, it's giving me back the A is the first element of the list, the B is the second, the C is the third. It's looking for white space characters and just blowing the string apart on those. If I say something like space, 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 XYZ, space, space, ABC, space, dot split, it's throwing away the leading and trailing white space. The fact that there's multiple space characters there, it does what you would expect, right? Break this up on white space and give me back the things that might be interesting. You can make it more sophisticated. If I say something like A colon B dot split on a colon, it splits the string up using colon as the separator instead of spaces. Please notice that here, that is A space. Let me page it up a little bit so people can see. Better at the back? Okay. That is A space colon space B, and I'm saying split that on colons. Well, you get A space and space B. Okay? If I told it to split on colons, it ignores everything else and says, you want me to use colon as the separator. So if I'm reading in a line of text like this, if I want to get the band name and everything else, I can split that on the colon. Right? And then if I want to break this apart into pieces, I can split that on spaces and so forth. It's a cheap and easy way to start breaking text up into more manageable pieces. Okay, so everybody okay with that? You'll find this useful. All right. Second thing, if I want to store a record of how many instruments are in the Berliner Philharmonic, somehow I want to store the fact that there are 5 violins, 2 violas, 2 tubas, 1 percussion, 1 trumpet. What data structure should I be using? Dictionary. Key and value. Violin is the key. We've got 5 of them. Percussion is the key. We've got 1 of those. All right? This is exactly what something like a dictionary is meant for. It doesn't make much sense to say instrument 0, instrument 1, instrument 2. There's no real ordering on, trumpet, tuba, percussion, viola, violin. I just want to associate values with keys. Okay? And we've seen how to do that, sort of. Okay. Now, yep, the magic red pen of download.
This one, Linux, if anybody needs, I downloaded it from USB.
Okay, so we've got it on a USB for Linux, or Linux, if you were on this side of the Atlantic, right, or Linux.
Does anybody need?
Okay, Linux clients, okay. For those of you who come in a bit late, we are one by one downloading a Subversion client from Centivo.com, SmartSVN, download.html. There is a magic red pen of download being passed around to make sure that we don't have 20 people hit BT open trying to download the same file from the same node at the same time, because if they're running Luanda, and I think they are, it will interpret that as an attack and just shut us all off. That would be bad. Okay? So let's just stagger the downloads this morning, and we'll use it this afternoon. So the right output here is Berliner Philharmonic can play Beethoven's Zero Symphony. 10,000 volts can play Bunkers in the Ukraine. Okay? You could imagine having a band that could play several songs, and you can imagine that a particular song could be played by several bands. All right? Everybody okay with this? Okay, pair up and solve it. Now, for full marks, right? Think about how you're going to test it. As you start to write code, as you build the code, think about what is the smallest useful testable unit I could do next, and what do the tests for that look like? The question that I had before we started this was, okay, I'm doing research programming, right? And it's going to take me months to build something. I'm not going to write the whole program and then start to test and refactor it. What do I do? The answer is you build a small testable unit that you think you're probably going to need. Make sure that's working, and then figure out what the next piece is, and never be afraid to go back and refactor stuff you've built based on what you now understand about your needs. You're doing research. You're tackling problems you have not tackled before. I have solved this problem or variations on it probably 3 or 4 times a year for 10 years because I teach classes. I could start at the beginning and just write the code, and I'm pretty sure I would get it right the first time. But if I've done it 40 times, I should get it right the first time. I don't think any of you have solved this problem before. So do it in small pieces, step by step. Convince yourself that each step is working before you move on. Each piece you build will tell you a little bit more about how to do the next piece, and even about what the next piece should be.